Hi boys and girls, it's Show back with another video. Today we're going to do game week 9 in the Premier League, look at the fixtures, what we think the results might be, and obviously from a fantasy Premier League perspective who might be the standout players for that game, maybe some of the easier fixture runs coming up for pointers for you guys. So without further ado, let's crack on. So there's a fixture on Friday, so be wary of that. Obviously if you're sorting your team out, obviously you're going to have to get your transfers in and sorted before is it 6 the cut off point, maybe 6:30. 6:30 here, so 6:30 tomorrow, get your transfers sorted. So anyway, Arsenal Aston Villa, this one I've mentioned about Arsenal. They've been playing particularly well. They've had some good results recently. Aston Villa, a bit up and down. Sometimes they're a team that's actually a little bit hard to predict at the moment. You don't know which team you're going to get. Sometimes they're a team that's capable of keeping a clean sheet. Other times they score goals, and other times they're somewhere in the middle. And I think for the most part they've been somewhere in the middle. I think Arsenal have found an identity under Arteta now. So, like I mentioned, I've mentioned about having a player like Smith Rowe, Saka being sort of the two main ones there. They're going to be the consistent points getters, I think, for Arsenal throughout. But the question is whether you get Aubameyang in at the right time. Now, we got good points in the last game week, and if we take a quick look at him, we see her against Crystal Palace, obviously getting the goal. He's sort of here like a goal every sort of 2 games, as we've seen here over the last 5 fixtures. So he's a player that I think you should be looking at over this run here. Aston Villa, Arsenal could easily continue this run. Going unbeaten against Crystal Palace. That result where Crystal Palace played so well, previous Arsenal side would have capitulated and wouldn't have come back. And I really do feel like the players are pulling together, and there's a real desire to build something at that club. It's not a bad point at the moment, certainly in this part, building up towards Christmas when the fixtures start to congest, to go with some Arsenal players. So, Aston Villa obviously in different form. I very much expect this to be at the very least a draw, but due to the sort of home form of Arsenal in recent weeks, I'm gonna predict an Arsenal 2-1 win here. Just be looking at Saka, Smith Rowe, Aubameyang. This is a good time to get Aubameyang in. As we can see here, this is a decent run, so have a think about that at 9.9 when he's usually costing like 11. I think it's a steal and a good way of getting rid of Lukaku, for example, if you've got Lukaku in your team, because he's out injured at the moment. Right, moving on. Chelsea versus Norwich. Norwich got a good point in the last game. They battled hard for that result, but I do think Chelsea they'll want a reaction from that Brentford game, because anyone that watched that game, they made lots of changes, which most of the bigger teams had to do during the international break. They were struggling really to sort of find a rhythm in their play. I thought it was like too many changes to find that kind of rhythm and a kind of cohesion with those players that had played together. But obviously, I'd imagine this would resort to type players like Mason Mount were on the bench. But the key thing is obviously Lukaku not being fit. So whether they'll have the incision and won't be toothless in attack in this game, it's hard to say. But like I say, I've not been impressed with Chelsea in recent weeks. I do expect them to get over the line, but I think predicting like a free-flowing goal fest here is not the right way to go about it. I think it's probably going to be maybe like a 1-0 Chelsea win, 2-0 max. It's difficult to predict who would be the points getters, but I think them playing at home, it's a safer bet to think that someone in the defence is going to get some points, and whether obviously they can get assist or goals. The issue that I've found now as well is that Alonso's gone out of the team. It's very, very difficult to predict whether Chilwell is going to now just go on a run here. Obviously, whether he's been impressed in training, it's hard to say. So maybe think about switching. If we look at just a quick look at the Chelsea defence here. Yeah, just very much about thinking about switching someone maybe more dependable in the defence that you know is going to play. So I'm thinking more of a, like I say, a Christensen, maybe at 5.1. You can see he's got good points here. I do think these are the type of players, Rudiger and Christensen, they're going to play. And yeah, they may not have the sort of assists and things like that, but with the way Chelsea set up, and you saw in the Brentford game as well, they are tough to beat. We're playing with that sort of 5 at the back once they go into their defensive positions. So yeah, I think Mendy and defence is a good idea, but you just need someone more dependable now than going with Alonso or Chilwell maybe. But if you're wise to it, this is definitely a game for one of them. So yeah, go for it by all means. So moving on to Crystal Palace, Newcastle. This one, Crystal Palace coming off a good result against Arsenal. They have been playing well under Vieira. You can see the development in the way they're playing. I think, as I've mentioned on the previous videos, doing this Gameweek Fantasy Premier League thing, Conor Gallagher's obviously the main guy, I'd suggest, from the Crystal Palace team. Edouard Mendy's I keep calling him Edouard Mendy. I don't know why I keep doing that. It's hilarious. But I do think if we just go into the Crystal Palace setup here, I do think Edouard, Odsonne Edouard, isn't it? Yeah, Odsonne Edouard. I do think Odsonne Edouard is decent pickup at the moment. These two have actually played pretty well together. Now, they do cut chances out at the moment under Vieira, and whether you think this is worth a punt here, they're not cheap. They're not too expensive either, but there might be better options. I think the key for these kind of signings is about runs. So you get them in on a good run. Now, Newcastle at home is a good fixture to have them. So whether you think you can have an equal price, so I'm thinking, like, if you look at these two prices here, Benteke and Edouard, it's a 6.5 and a 6.3. Now, Ivan Toney is about that price as well. So you might be thinking, put one in for a fixture, switch one out maybe on, because Brentford have got a good run coming now. But to be honest with you, I'll just stick with Toney throughout the period, really, because what is the point for one game, really? It's a bit of a gamble. And then Newcastle, like I mentioned, all the time, every time, it's Sam Maximan or nothing, really, from this team. How are they going to react now that Steve Bruce is gone? The shackles may be released, but they could ship a load of goals. So Sam Maximan is the perfect player to have. If they do sort of like release the shackles, then they may score some goals. But whether the caretaker manager can get them solid away from home at Crystal Palace, who are confident at the moment, it's hard to see, really. So I'm going to go with a 2-1 Crystal Palace win here. So yeah, very much thinking Conor Gallagher is the player to obviously have in this game. If you've got him in your team, obviously there's no reason to take him out at this stage until obviously their run gets a little bit more difficult. So yeah, moving on to Everton versus Watford. Everton, interesting team. They bit of Jacqueline Hyde at the moment. For the large part, they're obviously doing very well, and they're decent in the league at the moment. But if we just look at some of their players, and then we'll just take a look gander at their fixture list. Decore, big miss here, by the way, out injured. I think it's about 6 weeks. So yeah, he's a significant loss for them. But yeah, if we just go on Damari Gray here, not an awful run here. You'd say a 3-game stint, I would suggest here. The fact that they're playing Spurs at home as well, certainly a good run of games here. Now, Everton, they a team that can flatter to deceive. I thought they carved out a lot of chances against West Ham, and West Ham just played insanely well, and some big performances, Declan Rice being one of them, really stood out. And I just thought that they really sort of managed the game very well, West Ham. Whereas Everton, it felt much more like they were desperate to create chances, but it was at a kind of cost to how they were sort of trying to control the tempo of that game, going a bit out of shape too much and allowing West Ham to sort of pick them off at certain times and really playing into West Ham's hands. Now, whether that was the fact they were just at home trying to impress the fans, I mean, that might be possible. So Watford at home, maybe a similar situation where they go for it a bit and leave themselves exposed at the back. Yerry Mina should be back in the team over the international break. Obviously, he was on the bench, so he was brilliant against United. So he should be solidify their defence a bit more. So yeah, don't expect them to be so exposed at the back. I think they'll address that issue. Watford, certainly a team that I would not sort of trust with a lot of players, bar Ismail Assar. Really I'd be thinking if I was you guys to just stick obviously with the combination of Townsend, Damari Gray. Like I've mentioned with Everton before, their fullbacks don't really do a lot because they sit quite deep. They don't bomb on a lot. A lot of their quality is from the wing play. And obviously whether you want to kind of gamble on a Rondon, who's now in the team while Calvert-Lewin's out, I think this is a good shout at 6 during this period. I would think about going Solomon Rondon, and that would probably be my sneaky pick for this game week. If you're not going to go Ivan Toney, Solomon Rondon would be my pick. So moving on. Leeds versus Wolves. Leeds, we know, I've covered this before, the run's quite long, so they've got a good run of games at the moment. Rafinha should be back fit now, so all those people have got him. Obviously stick with him at this stage because their run is absolutely fine. It just continues on. It's a good set of fixtures for a good while. He's a kind of player, I think, really, just if you're not going to overload with Leeds players, like, for example, maybe like a Dan James here or there, the fact that Bamford's out, I think it's probably worth not going overboard with Leeds, especially with their defence, because they do ship goals because of the way they like to play. So really, I think it's just put in Rafinha and just have him there. He should do well for you over that stretch. So that would be my advice with that. Wolves, I mentioned Hwang at the moment, doing very well. Jimenez still doing very well there. They're a team as well that I think could get clean sheets. I don't think it's a game for a Leeds game that they'll do it in. Very much think that with the Wolves outfit at the moment, I would still stick with the strikers. I'd get one of these two in your team if you're looking at Wolves as an option for you, especially Hwang's value at 5.6. If we look at his value here. Yeah, so his value at 5.6 is an absolute steal at the moment. If we look at it, his history of fixtures here, 87 minutes here, 98.7 is obviously getting the game time now, getting the run. I do think they're in a sort of a good bit of form. They have been all season. They're well managed, I just think that Wolves. They're in a phase at the moment where I just think they'll always stay within games and carve out those chances. And I think sticking with one of these players long term is not a bad idea. Now, whether Jimenez at 7.6 is a bit steep to be kind of sticking with him for any kind of period of time, I do think that Hwang might be the option here. Certainly because you can have him where you're only going with 2 up front, use him for a bench boost, something like that in a game week. It's definitely something to think about. Moving back to the fixtures here. We've got Leeds Wolves. Like, my prediction for this is going to be a 2-1 Leeds win. I think Wolves will still do very well in the game, but I'm just thinking that Leeds have got to get going at some point during the season, and why not now at home? Players a bit fresher from the international break, being well over now. So, moving on to Southampton versus Burnley. This is a difficult one to predict, really, because Burnley, they've got a few players that you think are pretty good fancy options, and they always have been. Like, I think obviously Dwight McNeil, Lowton, and Chris Wood. Those are the 3 that I'd be going for out of Burnley. I think they you know what you're going to get from them. You know that you're going to get the odd clean sheet from them being very, very solid. The set pieces, Chris Wood obviously benefiting from, the amount of deliveries that get put in. And then because of the amount of deliveries that get put in, those players that do tend to put in the deliveries, which I say was Brownhill and Dwight McNeil, it's very much worth having them in your team. You can see actually Westwood's having a decent season here. Chris Wood obviously there. Now, like I mentioned before about Ivan Toney and Solomon Rondon, Chris Wood is the third one. They all kind of resort to type because they kind of play a similar way, in the sense that they're obviously big physical strikers. They've all got good runs of games at the moment, so those are free to really consider there going forward. And then if we look at the Southampton perspective, as I mentioned, the Norwich, Southampton, Newcastle, those three in particular, I just don't have any interest really in finding where the value is. I just think it's too much of a headache, and most of the time you'll get it wrong. Like I say, it's Ward-Prowse for the free kicks and the penalties or nothing really. So regardless of whether they're at home, until you actually see some evidence of Armstrong hitting the ground running or a Che Adams, it's really not worth putting any Southampton players in at all, in my opinion. So this fixture, I think it'll be close, but I'm going to go a sneaky 1-0 Burnley away win for this one. And they do what they typically do, pick up those odd important results that end up just keeping them in the league. Moving on to Brighton versus Man City. This one, I mean, Brighton have obviously had a good run. That Basuma situation's tricky, so how they'll navigate that in midfield, I do not know. We saw what Man City are coming off the back of in the Champions League. Foden is in the form of his life. Like, I'm watching him for the last few weeks. He's had moments in previous seasons where Foden's been, really, terrific. And you thought, what a fantastic play. He's done really, really well against this team and that team. This is a stretch of games where he's actually controlled games, and this is for England as well. Like, he's setting the tempo, he's spraying beautiful passes. He's at the peak of he's in a massive purple patch and the peak of his powers at the moment. And he's undroppable. And so whether you give Pep gives other players a chance, like Mahrez came into the team last week. Grealish did not come off the bench at all. Maybe that was the international break, but Foden played in both those international games. So that certainly wasn't the main reason for that Grealish being left out. But I'm hesitant to think whether they'll obviously stick with that again for another game. So you saw Walker as well, but I expect Walker to come back in. Grealish, maybe a bit of a gamble at the moment, but Walker, I think you'd be fine. I think he'll come back in, and at 5.5, he's good value. They've got a good run of fixtures, Man City, and I think, as you've seen for recent weeks, they're pretty stingy in terms of conceding goals because of how long in the game that they keep possession for. I think Brighton, they'll have phases of good play because they're confident, they're buoyant at their start to the season, but I think with Man City, and like I said, maybe the absence of Basuma in that game, I think Man City will roll them over here. So I think this one will be more one-sided than people anticipate. I'm going to go a 3-1 Man City win with this one. So for me, I think it's Foden and Walker would be my suggestion on that. If you've got a bit of money, maybe you want to think about putting in De Bruyne, because he's always a good fantasy point scorer, a bit like a slightly lesser version of Bruno Fernandes in terms of getting points, but obviously we know what his value is. So for me, I think Walker will come back in, and then obviously, like I mentioned, for me it's got to be Phil Foden, because I just think can you drop him away from home against Brighton as well? It's not like a typically easy fixture based on the form that they've been in, so I don't see it happening. Going on to the Sunday fixtures, we've got Brentford versus Leicester. Now, Brentford, terrific against Chelsea, should have scored, should have equalised, should have been a draw. It was a wave after wave of attack against Chelsea. They were unbelievably good, and it was only like a bit of early maybe a bit of nerves in early on in the game in front of their home fans, and Chilwell's obviously terrific strike near the end, so just inside the box, kind of cut across it, a bit like Vardy's, but the reverse side into the sort of top left hand corner. Without that sort of moment of quality, it could have been a game where, obviously Brentford really got something out of it, and I just think they're really difficult to play against. I see them as like a slightly upgraded version of Chris Wilder's Sheffield United, in terms of their unknown quantity, but their ability to play on the deck as well as be physical. And I just think at the moment, like I've shown, Ivan Toney's got, if we look at the strikers, because I'm pretty sure he's somewhere near the top here. Here he is. It's just a 6.4. Leicester at home, Burnley away, Norwich at home. I mean, Leicester ship goals. He could easily score. This is a good fixture list. I just think, this is my team here. Lukaku, obviously, going to be out injured, unknown return date. So for me, he's going straight into my team. Now, from a Leicester perspective, I think this is quite simple. Maddison and Harvey Barnes, I think they'll eventually start scoring points. Maddison played really well against United, but the issue is they're a little bit pricey, and you don't know how long they're going to play for. They might play for half an hour, they might play for 60 minutes, but they definitely won't play for a 90, and so you can't trust whether they'll actually get the points. So really, it is, for me, the two players that you've got to have out of Leicester are obviously Vardy at 10.6, still good enough. I think it's good value still for me. And then the other player being Pereira on the right-hand side for Leicester. Those ones are the two sort of mainstays. They're going to play for 90 minutes, and that they might get good points. But obviously, like I mentioned about Leicester shipping goals, a bit like Man United, can't really trust the defence. So at the moment, they're a bit of a one-man team in Fantasy Premier League. I wouldn't really go anywhere else other than Jamie Vardy. So yeah, Brentford, Leicester, I'm hesitant with this one. I'm going to go a 1-1 draw just because I think both are actually feeling good about themselves, and I really think it could just be who sort of maybe finishes their chances in the game. West Ham versus Spurs. This one, West Ham were obviously terrific. I thought Spurs, they managed that sort of euphoria from Newcastle's ownership in the previous game. The whole obviously Saudi takeover. I think this is a really difficult game to predict. It's a game that I would avoid if you don't have any West Ham or Spurs players. Maybe don't think about putting them in. I think Son is the one from Spurs in terms of, like, Kane looks like he's getting into a bit of form, but what's good about Son is that I just feel like he's going to either get a goal or an assist. Kane last season, we know he topped the goals and the assists for the Premier League, but I just think at the moment still Son's the main player for me. Saw it against Newcastle as well. Everything goes through him, and I just feel like in tough away games as well, I think he'll be the spark. So yeah, if you're going to go with Spurs at the moment, I still think it's Son that you should be looking at if you don't already have him. He's a kind of player as well that I think if you can get good value across your squad, like this is what I mean about having like Jamie Vardy at 12.6. If you had someone like him in your team, and then you moved on to a Son in midfield as well at 10.1, you're leaving good value around to afford, more expensive players. For example, you might want to upgrade from a Sanchez here. If you upgrade from a Sanchez over here, then potentially, you get a better goalkeeper in. You capitalise on Chelsea's good run, for example. You get a Mendy in, you're going to get clean sheets. So by organising your team like that, maybe going for a Vardy instead of a Cristiano Ronaldo, going for a Son instead of a Bruno, I definitely just you make sure that you do have Salah in your team, because that is absolutely vital. So for that game, I'm just going to go for a 1-1 draw again. 1-1, 1-1. Both of these games here, I just can't pick them. I just don't think there'll be clean sheets. And then Man United versus Liverpool. I shudder to predict this one, just because it could be any scoreline, bar probably United battering Liverpool, if we're being clear on that. I think Man United, they surely have to go more negative. The way they played against Atalanta was too open. It would also, as was covered by like Scholes and Rio in the BT studio, there was a huge disconnect between the attack and the midfield. Anyone that's played like Sunday League and stuff like that, you know when that happens because there's just gaps everywhere and you don't have the ability to cover the space and you're thinking, like, how's he free? How's he free? Where is everybody? And it's because there's a huge separation when your midfield and defence are too close to each other. Or actually, you could have it in a situation where everyone's separated. So the attacking line's separated from the midfield and the midfield separated from the defence. You got to make sure you have a defensive structure, whether you actually push up into the opposition half and you stay really compact together but high with a high line, or whether you start to sink deeper. And at the moment, you've got Fred and McTominay sitting in front of the back four, clearly being told not to move very far, and then inexplicably you've got the attacking line sort of like half-arse pressing, and leaving that huge gap. They addressed that in the second half, and I very much think even at home against Liverpool, I believe that United know that they need the results, and I think the fans are on board with just the kind of maybe being the underdog in this team, being difficult to beat. And so I actually see this game. I don't think Liverpool will batter United. They could win easily. My prediction is just going to be a 1-1 draw. I think we'll catch them out on the break, and then Liverpool, their quality as we sink back deeper and deeper over the second half, will catch up on us. Very much like last season, if everyone remembers that game, it went the exact same way. So I think it'll be a 1-1 draw. And if you're going to pick anyone, like again, the 1-1, who will score? Probably be Mo Salah. And for Man United, it'll probably be a Bruno goal or assist. So yeah, very much if you got those players, this game, no reason to take them out, basically. So yeah, that'll do it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please put in the comment section, maybe what do you think the shock result might be of the game week. Who you think the standout players to pick for, whatever. If you've got any questions, if you've got a question, maybe if you need some advice or something like that, just stick that in the comments as well. I'll be sure to help you out within there. Picks for this game week: Ivan Toney, Chris Wood, and Solomon Rondon. They're the three. Get one of those in your team, maybe for a couple of weeks, because they've all got good runs. Okay, so thanks a lot for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.